I was born May 25, 37, outside of Green Creek, about 2-3 miles south. Yeah, I had 6 brothers and 2 sisters. My parents, they come from Cottonwood and Ferdinand, and their parents came from Germany and Switzerland, and they arrived in this country around the turn of the century. And then when my dad married Caroline Wemhoff in 34, we lived in Green Creek for 5 years before we found this ranch in Grangeville. And then I was in the first grade, or going to the first grade at that time. And since it was inconvenient for me to try and go to school, I stayed with my grandparents in Ferdinand and walked to school most every day, which was about 2.5 miles from Ferdinand. My dad and mom had to build a house on the place we bought outside of Grangeville, but it had all the convenience, as far as running water and everything, and it was a 3-storied house. The basement is where we had, where the furnace and the cellars and our showers and stuff were, and we slept, of course, on the upstairs, and everything was very adequate. I mean, there was no problem there. When I was still 4 and 5 years old, we still farmed with horses, and that was just when the tractors were starting to come in. And before Dad even left the Green Creek place, he bought a Cleatrack. And even though we pulled some of the equipment with it, still there was a lot of things that they still had to use the horses for because the tractor wasn't equipped for that. I mean, simple things like pulling the manure spreader, My folks had, besides wheat farming, cattle and hogs and chickens, and a huge garden. And we had a Shetland pony called Rabbit Eye that pulled the cultivator, and I usually rode the horse up and down the rows while my dad ran the cultivator behind. Yeah, to touch on that horse we called Rabbit Eye, that was such a well-trained horse, and we used it to pull a buggy, the ones that had the reaches that run alongside, And one night we forgot to unsaddle it and put it away, so it just took its time just going around the place, eating grass, and it was going. The road that went past my folks' place at that time, the gravel road only ended right at the home place, and then the dirt road went up the hill where the power line went. But Rabbit Eye was halfway up the hill. Just when he obviously, when he got too close to the fence, he would back away from it and move over a little bit and go up again. He was that well trained. He knew what, But we used to use that horse for everything. Dad had a dairy. He milked right around 30 cows, I think, most of the time. And there was a creamery in Grangeville, and all the milk was trucked via 10-gallon cans. We'd load those 10-gallon cans, which would be, 8 or 10 of them. Oh, no, it wouldn't be that many. Must have been about 6 or 8 of them. On the back of a international pickup, I'd take it in and dump it off at the creamery in the morning before going to school, and then on the way back I'd pick up the empty cans. And the dairy was pretty modern then. It was automatic milkers. We had the big cooler in the shop part of the barn. And it was all stainless steel, and of course, it was constantly government inspected, which we don't have any problem with that. 90% of our food was stuff we canned or butchered. Every fall, Dad would get together with a neighbor or two, and we'd butcher a hog and a steer, or a couple of them, and process them. So you can imagine we did a lot of canning, and some of the things I miss today is the fact that my mom made a lot of sauerkraut and sausage and root beer, all those things. almost always after school events, basketball games, they'd have sock hops, and they used to have really good dance bands, like the Rhythmaires. The local people were, played their instruments and drums and stuff. That was always a lot of fun. It's too bad that isn't carried on today. When I was a sophomore in high school, I went to St. Gertrude's Academy, where my brother next under me had already went as a freshman, and the Stoltzes and the Hainers and a few other families were also already trucking their individuals over to St. Gertrude's. So I graduated from St. Gertrude's in '55. I really enjoyed my years at St. Gertrude. I wasn't all that anxious to graduate. I knew those were good years. And anyway, then I went to college for 2 years. First at the University of Idaho, then Carroll College. I ran out of money, and the superintendent of Grangeville Schools District knew that I was studying to be a teacher. So he says, I'd like to get you to teach school in Elk City for a year and make some money. So I did that. I taught the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade after only 2 years of college. And that was a lot of fun. I stayed on an outfitter ranch that brought in hunters. And just to jump ahead a little bit, the next fall, I didn't go to school that fall because my dad got kicked by a cow. So I helped him, and then I went up and helped at the outfitter ranch in Elk City take in hunters. The winter semester, I went back to Carroll College, and then I transferred there and went to Gonzaga for the rest of my education. My aunt's youngest was just about 6, 7 years older than I was, so we got to be real close friends, and she wound up being the mother of John Stockton. And so when I went to college, I spent a year at her place instead of being at the dorm, and then it worked out better to go to the dorm after that. But so I babysat John Stockton as a kid for a while when he was about 2 years old. I still hadn't graduated when I went to Riggins to teach, and then I enjoyed that too, and was assistant coach in basketball, or I was actually the junior high coach and the freshman coach, and then I helped with the track and field events, and also coached baseball. So that was our first year of baseball there. So that was a real learning experience for all of us, but we had a lot of fun. I met Glenda while I was attending University of Washington summer school session. It so happened that in meeting her, that she invited me to a party at her folks's, and I got to know her dad only to learn that her dad was at a hunting camp that I helped set up and take the game from. So we clicked off right away real good. And then I got a teacher's contract at WEIP, which is now Timberline. So we got married about a year later. And so Glenda and I spent the last 2 years at WEIP married, and then we had a chance to buy this ranch that we own right now. And the bachelors that owned this place knew that I really liked farming. So they asked my dad one day, is Ron still interested in farming? And he said, oh yeah. So they come up and saw us, and from then on, that's history. So we moved here the winter of '66, or we bought it the winter of '66, '67, moved here in '67, and been here ever since. Colleen was born when we was at WEIP, and then Brent was born just the spring of that we moved back here. And then we had Shelley a year later and Chris a year later. In the first years of our being on the farm was quite challenging, of course. the farm just kept growing. We just kept plugging away. I'd get outside jobs of carpentering, and I coached junior high basketball at St. Peter and Paul for 10 years. Not 10 years consecutively, it was 5 years, and then there was a gap of about 5 years, and then 5 years more. When we got married, we bought a 10 by 57 trailer and drug it back and forth to Weihai from during the summertime. And then when we bought this, we moved it here, built a roof over top of it, added a couple rooms to the side, and we was in there for 19 years. And all that time, Glenda would constantly be saying she knew where the house was going to be built, and she'd have me haul up 2x4s, lay out the floor plan up here so she could see what it was like. Mark was born in 77 and Kim was born in 79. It took us 3 years to complete. We moved in April of 83. Colleen was a senior that year. So she didn't get to enjoy the house too long before she was off to college and got married. But, well, Brent too, for that matter. He was only here 1 year and then off to college. Of course, for me, farming is fun. So it was always fun to have the family participating, making decisions, calving out the cows, the times we spent fencing in some heck of a brushy environments, and we used to do a lot of horseback riding. That was always very enjoyable. Seemed like we always had 1 or 2 wild horses in the bunch, so that keeps certain things stirred up. But we found out that farming and teaching doesn't work. I had to have days off when it was good weather, and they just prayed that it was always raining, so I'd be there. Yeah, for the first 15 years of our married life, we took no vacations. Any money we could scound, we put in the farm. We stuck it back in here. Brent had enough frequent flyer miles to send Mom and I to Australia and New Zealand for a couple weeks, and in the frequent flyer miles, I don't understand to this day how they applied to a hotel room. But we had the hotel room and everything paid for. The only thing we were out was our meals. And he had spent some time with Microsoft in Australia, so he knew some people that we connected with, and up until just a year or two ago, we were still keeping in contact with him. But the couple we got to know down there, he was a doctor and his wife was a biology teacher, and I'm a biology teacher, so we had a lot in common. So we went out to the rainforest, and it's amazing the number of plants that we have here that they have there also, or a real close cousin. And one of the interesting things about being there that sticks out in my mind is the rainforest. Even though I'm a biology teacher, I didn't realize how much the vegetation creates its own atmosphere, because you go in the rainforest and it's raining, and when you go out of it, it's just like it went through a door. Where they started cleaning the land off and where they were raising sugar canes and other stuff, that was amazing. Within, let's say, 100 yards, you would go from raining to sunshine. And you could turn around and go right back in it too, And then we went up to vista points above Sydney that you could see this blue haze. And that blue haze is the evaporation from the eucalyptus trees that's always given off this blue vapor. That was something that we don't see around here. Quite different than Camas Prairie. Then we went to New Zealand, and somebody told us, you want to get on a tour bus, which is the smallest one they got. And that was a very good idea, because we got to be it was a chance to meet the driver and everybody, sort of on a one-on-one basis. And the individual who happened to be driving this tour bus, we really got to know quite well. And he was extremely good at American history. I mean, I just couldn't get over how he could tell us American history that I didn't know at all or had forgotten. And I told him one time, I said, well, how come you know so much about American history? He said, where the United States goes, the rest of the world goes. He says, you guys are setting the tone for freedom. And if you guys screw up, the whole world screws up. That has really stuck in my mind. Yeah, I always like to comment on my dad's life. He went from horse and buggy to watching somebody land on the moon. Excuse me. How many times have we said, I wonder if we're going to see the same transition in our life, the same difference. But I think we're seeing it in terms of electronics. You know, even though it doesn't stick out like landing on the moon does, the technology, the difference in living, and you know, it's not going to be very long. We're not even going to have to get on our tractor to farm. We just start the tractor up from our computer on the table and go out there. We're getting darn close to it already. I don't see the commitment that I did as a kid. The commitment to your job, to your religion, to your country. The patriotism, to me, doesn't seem to be near like it was when I was a kid. I hope I'm wrong. Oh man, I hope I'm wrong. But just being with the family is my entertainment. Just going to ball games, watching the kids play. I mean, that's what we enjoy. Our kids have done real well in the jobs they've taken on, and their kids are fun to watch. And they study hard, and I'm proud of that. They got the priorities in the right place. All the grandkids do. They know how important religion is in their life. They know how important it is to, how important hard work is. Or they see it and they, I think, for the most part, try to imitate it. No, I'm very proud of our grandkids and kids. Oh, my mom extremely taught us humility, you know, to be appreciative of what you got. If you're great, everybody notices. You don't have to tell them. My dad was very much the one that you just paid attention to example. You know, he a lot of times used the word, "Oh, that's a good example," for your brothers or for your neighbors. And he would make statements like, "Good fences make good neighbors." You know, means keep your fence up so you keep your animals in and they keep their do unto others what you want them to do unto you, I've heard him say. Well, first of all, don't take anything for granted. And of course, it goes without saying, you know, be extremely honest. Money doesn't grow on trees. You got to earn it. And the other thing that sticks out in my mind, and my folks implied that too, is have respect. Respect other people's feelings, wishes. Even though you may not agree, at least respect their opinion. Yeah.